We're going to begin with the clashes at universities across the country. Take a look at the scene right now. Protesters on campus there in North Carolina. And then overnight, protesters here in New York at Columbia barricaded themselves inside the school. And now the university is taking more action. Stephanie Ramos is there on the scene for us. Good morning to you, Stephanie.
Robin, good morning. Despite warnings of suspension and expulsion for students involved in the encampment here at Columbia University, some pro-Palestinian protesters set up more tents on campus and stormed that academic building overnight. They say it is all in support of Gaza.
Overnight, pro-Palestinian protesters gathering outside Columbia University's Hamilton Hall and then storming the building. Video capturing students slamming desks, breaking windows, and barricading themselves inside. Just after 12:30 this morning, dozens of students left the encampment and entered the hall. Students defiant, refusing to dismantle their encampment.
You need to stop bombing. You need to stop indiscriminate killing, massacre of Palestinians in Gaza. That's how you end the war.
At least one person arrested Monday outside Columbia's gates, seen here being taken into custody.
Oh my God.
And overnight at Virginia Commonwealth University, a large crowd of pro-Palestinian protesters clashing with police in riot gear. This video showing police spraying what appears to be pepper spray at protesters. The university telling ABC News multiple arrests were made and claiming that many individuals involved were not students. This as similar demonstrations and clashes now playing out at more than 60 college campuses across the U.S. At the University of Texas at Austin, dozens arrested as protesters and police in riot gear clashed. At the University of Florida, 9 protesters arrested. The school saying the University of Florida is not a daycare and we do not treat protesters like children. They knew the rules. They broke the rules. Jewish students on both sides of the issue, some who are pro-Israel, say they've been harassed.
It's not easy to say they're alone when the whole university is practically against us.
At USC, administrators canceling their main commencement ceremony due to protests. Many of the soon-to-be graduates missed their high school graduation due to the pandemic.
My high school just had a drive-through graduation. I personally was really looking forward to having this main ceremony and traditional graduation for my whole life.
Back here at Columbia University, officials have not commented on the actions of those students that stormed that building overnight. As for the talks between student negotiators and university officials, those are at a standstill. But guys, already so many students here have been suspended.
All right, Stephanie, our thanks to you. We're going to bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. So much at play here. And one concern is the rights, the First Amendment rights of the students. How does free speech play into all this? How does it factor in?
So the First Amendment is not absolute, right? Think about libel laws, right? Someone can say something about someone else and they can get sued over it. And they can't say, well, it's my First Amendment right to say it. There are restrictions that are allowed within the First Amendment. To have a parade in a city, you still have to get a permit. You can't just say, we're allowed to do it. And the key here is that the universities and the authorities would say, we're not targeting what they're saying. It's not because of what flag they're holding up. It's because of the actions that they're taking. It's that they're shutting down buildings. They're trespassing on private property. And as a result, that's not protected by the First Amendment.
Right, the students who are not protesting have rights as well to live their lives, to study, to not be disrupted.
Correct. And most importantly, the university has the authority to determine what they do and they don't want on their campus.
Is there a difference between public and private universities?
There is. Look, you have much more autonomy when you're a private university to say this is what we want. You don't have to worry about being an arm of the government. With that said, even public universities in this context, again, think about a public park. We've seen it many times. Encampments can be built in a public park, and eventually the authorities can say, sorry guys, we're going to come in. You can't have this in a public park. It's the same basic idea here. Even though there's more protections in a public university than private, doesn't mean that the public universities can't take action.
Hello there, welcome friends. It is RD once again bringing you more unwatchable content and yet another video that no one will watch. But if you are one of the no ones willing to watch RD, then today's video no one is going to watch is New York under siege, and we do got ourselves a little bit of a riot brewing situation in good old NYC, and we do have a whole host of articles to select from regarding this incident that is developing at Columbia University regarding some pro-Palestine protests that are getting a little bit rambunctious and out of hand. And by all accounts, this is actually something of a nationwide occurrence with other, as far as I'm aware, college and university campuses also taking part in pro-Palestine protests. My goodness, that's a little bit of a mouthful. You would not want to be saying that after too many tequilas. But we are starting out at a website called newsforsanantonio.com, which isn't a government website for a change, and it isn't a government PDF, which is also maybe a refreshing change from some of you regular offenders, some of you Nowrdians, as I'm calling regular offenders now, who do tune in regularly and do tend to pay a little bit more attention to most of my viewers to the content and information that I do bring you in these shit video productions. And here at NoOneWatchesArDee, you get your info for nothing and your facts for free. I don't watch my RD. See what I did there? But anyway, back to this article, guys. Columbia University issues a shelter in place as police swarm near New York campus, and protesters, guys, police in riot gear. Told you so. FEMA field force operations. The stream I did put up a couple of days ago on the all new RD, No One Watches RD, as well as a week or so ago on the original No One Watches RD. And the reason I did bring the field force manual, operations manual, courtesy of FEMA to your attention is because FEMA in recent weeks and even through the month of April and into the month of May are conducting a whole host of field force operation exercises across the nation. And field force operations, if you weren't one of the nobodies that watched that field force operations stream, field force operations is all about martial law, domestic disturbances, civil unrest, and how law enforcement as well as military are being trained in ways to round up, mass arrest, detain, and dampen the spirits of protest using less than lethal munitions, tear gas and sonic weaponry. And to follow up that field force operations, I did bring you a special director's cut of This Is What Martial Law Looks Like, which was an inside boots on the ground look at some of the goings on in events that took place in Toronto in 2010 during the G20 summit, that in my opinion was a training exercise for the implementation of martial law should it ever be introduced. And this give all the law enforcement, all the private security agencies, all the alphabets an opportunity to run FEMA force operations straight from the manual into real life experiences and train for future reference in the scenario of a real life martial law scenario. But back to these student riots. These seem to be getting a little bit out of hand in the fact that FEMA have been conducting all of these field force operations suggests that they are preparing law enforcement for something. And could these campus college riots be the fuel to indicate mass widespread civil unrest that could lead to the implication of martial law. But at the very, very least, it does seem as though law enforcement have been deployed, and so far FEMA force operations have been used up as to I am aware, with removing some of these students from their location. But the article starts off by saying students with the Gaza Solidarity Encampment block of the Solidarity Encampment block the entrance of Hamilton Hall HH at Columbia University after taking it over on Tuesday, April the 30th. So that was yesterday evening at time of recording, and that took place in New York City, Columbia students for justice in Palestine called for a mobilization close to midnight, and this was reported by Marco Postigo Storell via the Associated Press. But Columbia University has issued a shelter-in-place order, which is a curfew, perhaps, maybe, and they issued this as scores of police officers in riot gear swarmed near the New York campus while protesters continue to occupy a building to demonstrate against the Israel-Hamas war. More than 1,000 protesters have been arrested after the last 2 weeks on campuses in states including Texas, Utah, Virginia, North Carolina, New Mexico, Connecticut, California, Louisiana, New Jersey, and some of those clashes have become violent against police in riot gear. There is a little video here. Let's have a watch. 23 minutes long. You know what I'm going to do? Let's not watch, and let me see if I can download that and we can watch it after you've heard me speaking. But I think there is load more. Is that more from the information or more stories? Protesters in custody. So this is a following, but there was some photos that I did want to go and look at the original one. They might actually be here, as well as a video. Is this 23 minutes long as well?
Breaking news as we come on the air. Clashes on campus continue coast to coast tonight, with the situation at Columbia University turning violent. Right now, New York police have moved onto the campus. Ryan Smith is standing by at the live desk with the details. Ryan.
Breaking tonight, within the hour tonight, New York City police officers moved right into Columbia University and are now making arrests at this hour. You're seeing right here a live camera from the scene showing that police presence tonight on campus. We've learned they entered the occupied Hamilton Hall through a second-floor window. Live pictures earlier showed us at least 50 officers using an elevated ramp to climb into the building. And just in the last few minutes, I actually saw NYPD buses hauling protesters arrested out of that area. This all, again, going down around 9 o'clock tonight. A shelter in place was first issued to students on campus as well. The massive police response, of course, comes after protesters stormed Hamilton Hall and occupied the campus building early this morning. The school today warning that students taking part in this occupation will be expelled. We'll continue to monitor this live camera there at Columbia University throughout the night. Now, a similar demonstration we've learned unfolding on the campus across the Northwest. Protesters right here at Portland State University have taken over the library there, forcing a campus-wide closure. Our reporter on the ground there says there are now tents lining the inside of campus of the library, and wooden pallets are everywhere. They say they want the university to cut its ties with Boeing. The university president responding to this developing scene tonight.
We cannot, however, allow the continued occupation of Millar Library. That's just plain and simple. We've asked the Portland Police Bureau to help us to remove the occupiers from the library. It's not safe for our students.
Now to an alarming discovery out of Texas. Buckets filled with chunks of concrete were found on the campus there at the University of Texas, Austin. University officials say the 5-gallon buckets were strategically hidden across campus. Similar buckets, reportedly with rocks, were used to assault police officers over the past week.
And as this continues to unfold, remember, we have continuing coverage of the chaos that is sweeping college campuses throughout our newscast. For 24/7 updates, head right there to thenationaldesk.com.
Word just in this morning that the U.S. drug...
Well, let's not watch that one, although it does look as though it is about marijuana. Let's see if we can look at some of these photos before we read the article. There are 34 of them. That picture straight away suggests to me that possibly, just possibly, maybe those individuals might be acting as protesters, but that's just a thought and opinion of mine. There looks some jovial folks, and he looks a little bit like the kid from Christmas Story, but grown up. And the other guy on the left-hand side of him looks a little bit like sort of unshaved, unsheveled Harry Potter. There's a picture through a window. I don't suppose that's supposed to symbolize somebody being in the crosshairs, and it looks as though the window has been broken. That's an interesting shot through the two illuminated windows of what is looking like a couple of protesters holding a banner. There's an advertisement. We'll skip it. Hins Hall. I don't want to point out the HH and the fact that one guy not wearing a shirt almost looks like he's delivering some kind of salute that would be frowned upon in modern times. But if you were around in Germany, say during the 1930s, I'm pretty sure you would have seen that salute quite frequently being produced at any given moment. A chap on the roof with a Palestine flag and a V for victory sign. I'm guessing that there are some females or maybe males wearing those things that Arabs wear. If or not they are actually Arabic people or Islamic people, or if they are, perhaps, agent provocateurs, should we suggest, wearing costumes to look as though they might be wearing attire that would suggest they support Palestine. Who knows? An arm through a broken window, and some protesters behind it. Skip the ad. Again, guys, these are looking a little bit staged to me. And another thing I've noticed as well with a lot of these photos, I have had my eye on some of these protests, and as we saw in the video, they are coast to coast, nationwide, in a lot of states. In a lot of states that FEMA have been conducting recently, FEMA Field Force Operation Training Exercises. But a lot of photos that I am seeing of these campuses, they all seem to have the same tent, and there again is a picture of an individual, I'm sure, that is staged for the photograph, dead center, with a Palestine flag draped upon their shoulders in a headscarf and a phone in their hand. Some banners from the windows. Sort of a scantily clad woman there that probably would not be allowed or permitted to walk around Palestine, showing her midriff and as much thigh as she is showing there. And I'm pretty sure one or two of you may be looking to see if there is a little glimpse of camel toe. There is some smoke going on there, and some placards being held up. Guy with glasses in the background. I'm sure that guy there is going to end up a meme template. Where was this energy on Jan the 6th? And there are some police with their riot shields and riot uniforms ready and waiting to deploy into the crowds and enforce some field force tactics courtesy of our fine friends at FEMA's. Yeah, that definitely looks staged as fuck. Let me know if you have any thoughts upon that. There's some spray paint on windows, looking like an arrest there. Again, that was something we did see in the Field Force manual, a government-issued training manual PDF documentation just the other day on this channel. And I told you guys that they are carrying out and conducting all of these Field Force exercises for something. Are these college campus riots going to be the something that they are going to be using and putting into practice those training tips, methods that they learned during those training exercises, courtesy of our fine friends at FEMA, just wanting to keep us safe. Jews against genocide. Again, another individual being arrested there. I don't know if that's his leg, or if no, that's the legs of a policeman arrested him. It almost looked like he was wearing police boots, but it wasn't. There's somebody pepper spraying a crowd. Resistance against occupation is a human right. There's an individual with an Israel flag and an American flag banners in the background, more advertising. Stop the apartheid, stop the genocide, I'm guessing that says. And there's some girls waving placards in the background, someone dressed in a blanket. More Palestinian flags. Ooh, they do look a little bit scary, don't you think, folks? That is your police force there, looking very militant and militarized, and as though they are not going to take any nonsense in please don't try and tell them you don't comply with their wishes. I'm pretty sure that will just give them an excuse to batter the shit out of you. Someone being arrested once again, a police officer with a tattoo, some people stand outside the library building there, Hamilton Hall. More banners, wide shot of the campus, I guess, another ad, sorry about that guys, couple wearing Israel flags. Palestine flags in a crowd there, and that is it. So let's come out of there, read the article, guys. Members of the New York Police Department, a strategic response team, load arrested protesters from Columbia University onto a bus on Tuesday, April the 30th, 2024 in New York. After entering the campus, a contingent of officers approached the Hamilton Hall, the administration building that the student protesters began occupying in the morning. New York City officers took protesters into custody late Tuesday. And this is sort of going on at the time I am recording. Guys, I did actually try to set up StreamYard to go live so I could share some screens and we could watch some live streams of what was going on, but for some reason every time I went to save the stream that I was trying to set up, it kicked me out and took me back to the home page, and after sort of 3 or 4 times of attempting it, I thought, well, let's just make a video, it's a lot easier in the end of the day. But sorry, so Tuesday, Columbia University called in the police to end the pro-Palestine occupation on the New York campus. The scene unfolded shortly after 9 p.m. as police wearing helmets and carrying zip ties and riot shields massed at the Ivy League University's entrance, and officers breached Hamilton Hall, an administration building on campus, to clear the structure. And there is watch live, police in riot gear at Columbia University. Can we watch a little bit of that? Can we? I don't think we're going to be able to do that, so let's stop. Oh no, is it working? Something's happening. No, nothing's happening. So let's go back out of here. There was that article. I did want to try that video. Can I? Right, I'll figure out how to download that after. But if we do just jump out of here, guys, as I said, you can sort of almost take your pick from any of these articles. Look from in the last 26 minutes. Let me do a refresh so it's updated. An hour ago, 46 minutes ago, New York City and Columbia campus. I'm sure nearly all of these are going to be exactly the same, just a little bit reworded. We know that police have entered the building. They've arrested some of the protesters. They took them on a bus. There is a shelter in place issued at that campus, I believe, in Columbia, that we just saw in that article. But this does seem to be an ongoing, developing situation. But let me just stop my camera for a second and let me see if I can download that video to watch. Well, this is very strange, folks. The webpage we were just reading, and I went back to try and find the video to see if I could download it, isn't there anymore. So one can only wonder what was in that video as to why the page isn't there anymore. But folks, I will try to find you some video content to read. But as I said, guys, you can almost take your pick from a whole host of articles that are coming up in the web search related to this information or this latest incident, that are pretty much going to be all the same as the one that I've already read you. So I'm not going to force you to endure me endlessly reading articles all about the same thing, but I am going to look a little bit more into this and see if I can find any information from any of the other college campuses and see if there are any more developments with those regarding police involvement, riot shields, baton waving, FEMA field force manual tactics being put into full effect, guys. But this does look as though something is definitely developing. And another thing I have actually noticed that a couple of videos that I have tried to download using YouTube downloading apps are also coming out, although they're in YouTube. Sort of when I embed them to download them, they're not showing up, or they're being blocked. But as I said, guys, I will go and get you a little something to watch before I wrap this up and do the outro pleasantries. But thanks for you who are tuning in to this. As I said, I did want to sort of do this live and sort of do a little bit of investigation as it was happening, but wasn't to be permitted, I'm afraid, due to the StreamYard app not permitting me to actually save and set up the stream required to broadcast live. So this was the next best thing, and as you can see, guys, content that we just read a few seconds ago, or actually it's a few minutes ago at time of recording. I had to take a little break in between that previous recording and trying to start this one with the new video that I found. But as we can see, no longer there, folks. So savor that recording of that article, because that article no longer exists. But over to the video content.
Take a look at this. Things have escalated there. You see members of the NYPD law enforcement, from what we are told, from what my producers are telling me, is that some of these officers will be making contact, making entrance there in Hamilton Hall. Now, from what I'm being told, this is on the campus of Columbia University. Police are trying to make entry into Hamilton Hall. Remember, Hamilton Hall was one of these campus buildings that protesters just last night moved into and occupied, causing some damage, causing some vandalism. We have no sense, though, how many protesters are still occupied there in Hamilton Hall. So I want to refer to the university statement from earlier today when administrators were threatening both expulsion and suspension for students who still remain 24 hours later in Hamilton Hall. So we're going to stay with this because it does look like NYPD officers are going to be making some type of entry into Hamilton Hall itself through this window. So you didn't see this. I saw this offline. We were speaking with Nima Rahmani there on the Trump trial, but they brought in, they being law enforcement, this massive vehicle, likening it to, it kind of reminded me of a SWAT Bearcat vehicle, but it was much larger than that. And so hopefully some of our cameras can zoom back out so you get a sense of how massive this vehicle is, because they are on an extension of the vehicle still to get up there to the window of Hamilton Hall. Okay, there you see NYPD officers making entry into Hamilton Hall. If you're not familiar with Columbia University, it is one of the main campus buildings on the uptown campus there. So you can see now 3 of these officers inside the building, or about to be inside the building. You see there, going in, they're putting their riot shield in first, and then they are making entry. It looks like this is a second-story window. All right, so some of the officers opened up the next window so they can more easily get inside the building here. We have about 4 officers about to be inside the building there on Columbia's campus. All right, so we're going to keep this up. You're going to be watching this all on. Okay, they're going to zoom out now, and you're going to get a sense. Remember, I said this is an extension of this large vehicle the NYPD has deployed to walk up into one of the floors here, one of the stories. I'm not entirely sure if it's first story or second story, but officers could not access the ground level entrance. That's why they are doing this. That's why they are deploying this massive vehicle, what appears to be some type of SWAT Bearcat vehicle. We have another vantage point as well. I'm going to put up two of these shots here because both of them are on the campus of Columbia University, and we have a ground shot, I believe. Stand by here. It's known as a Lenko Bear, not a Bearcat. All right, let's put up this shot here. All right, the vehicle itself, I'm being told, is known as a Lenko Bear. All right, so you can see there, we have another vantage point on the campus. All right, I want to put this up here. We have this video. All right, don't have that routed in. We're going to get that routed in so you can get a better sense of the vehicle. So you see NYPD officers now just kind of walking up that extension of the Lenko Bear, this massive vehicle that is being used to gain entry inside of Hamilton Hall there. So you can see. On the other vantage point that we are showing you, that is from the ground. And you see there many members of the media, many student demonstrators, other protesters, other activists are watching this all unfold. Let's take this back full. This is a much better vantage point. More NYPD officers are making entry inside Hamilton Hall. Remember, we do not know how many students are still occupying the building. We don't have a good sense of that. I want to read, though, from some of the reports coming out of Columbia today and from the university spokesperson. The university spokesperson, Ben Chang, said this earlier in a statement. He said, "We regret that protesters have chosen to escalate the situation through their actions. Our top priority is restoring safety and order on our campus. We made it very clear yesterday that the work of the university cannot be endlessly interrupted by protesters who violate the rules. Continuing to do so will be met with clear consequences. Protesters have chosen to escalate to an untenable situation, vandalizing property, breaking doors and windows, and blockading entrances, and we're following through with the consequences we outlined yesterday." It's about 9:30 there in the Big Apple on the Upper West Side. You're watching multiple NYPD officers gain entry into Hamilton Hall. That is what we are seeing right now. All right, Linda Schmidt has a better vantage point. She posted this on her account on X, the social media platform. Remember, Linda Schmidt, we've been relying on as well with Fox 5 New York. Take a look at this. I'm going to drop this here. That is the Lenko Bear. That's what it's known as. That's what it's referred to, that the NYPD have used. It's a zoomed out vantage point of how officers are gaining access and entry into Hamilton Hall. Back out live to Hamilton Hall here. All right, and you can see there the reason you're seeing some of these officers with cameras so they can document as they take into custody these student demonstrators. Okay, look at this. You see there on the hip of so many of these officers, those are the plastic zip ties that they will use to handcuff the student demonstrators who have occupied the campus building. All right. So remember, all week we have shown you scenes like this of law enforcement moving on student demonstrators and arresting them. We saw it on the campus of UT Austin. We saw it on the campus even today near Tampa at the University of South Florida. We saw tear gas, flashbangs being deployed as well. What we have not seen yet in this entire protest movement are law enforcement officers making access and gaining entry forcibly there. I say forcibly because They broke the window there to get into a campus building. This is a first in the protest movement. The protest movement started here at Columbia University 2 weeks ago, gained traction on campuses nationwide, and you could argue this is the culmination of what we are seeing after countless threats by university administrators like President Manoush Shafiq, who warned students would be suspended for violating campus policies, that some would be expelled for violating campus policies, that, remember, that 2 p.m. Eastern deadline for many members of the tent encampment on the lawn in front of Butler Library to vacate. Remember, that deadline came and went, the encampment still up. And from what I understand, the reason why some of these student demonstrators occupied Hamilton Hall very, very late last night was to move inside of a building so they could stay here on campus and double down and entrench themselves further and riling up university administrators. And so you really see this clash here with the university administrators, the students themselves, outside agitators, and now law enforcement here. So we're going to keep reading some of the reporting to suggest what has gone on here, and because there's so much context to get to. So you're watching so many of these law enforcement officials gain access, make entry inside there of Hamilton Hall on Columbia's campus. What I want to read to you is this, and this has to do on Capitol Hill, but it's related and it's important. Because the House Judiciary Chairman, Jim Jordan, the Republican, and other GOP committee members, they sent letters today to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, to DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, questioning if there are national security risks posed by some of these anti-Israel protesters, and if student visas are being revoked, and if they're not being revoked, whether they should start being revoked. So they sent 2 letters, Jim Jordan did, and members of the committee, to Blinken and Mayorkas today, requesting information on those very questions with the deadline of May 14th. In the letter to Mayorkas, lawmakers are asking for information by that date related to the number of non-citizens, including those with student visas, who have endorsed or espoused terrorist activity during some of these anti-Israel protests. That is somewhat tangential to the movement here, especially there on Columbia's campus. All right, we have more of a zoomed out vantage point there. You can see many NYPD officers standing by in the foreground. They zoom back in, many going in to arrest some of these student demonstrators who are holed up in there on this campus. And you can see them there. We have not seen any students yet come out. And remember, we did see, I'm going to show you another shot. We did see those buses. All right, so now the picture is becoming clear, because I was over this scene last Monday, on another campus at NYU. The buses came in, the NYPD buses came in. They are being deployed to transport the student demonstrators who will inevitably be arrested, and they will be detained and processed. That is why those buses are outside the campus of Columbia University. You see there, this is one of the main entrances to Columbia. Let's go back there live. More NYPD officers gaining access into the building, into Hamilton Hall, to arrest the what they would call occupiers in the building. All right, so I want to offer some context as well, because remember when we brought you some of these law enforcement actions on places, on campuses that are private institutions, like Columbia is, like NYU is, law enforcement has to be invited. They have to be requested by university administrators, because it is a private institution because it is not a public institution. And so university leaders have to request this law enforcement action. That is what we have learned throughout the course of this entire protest movement here. All right, and you're going to see very, very soon here, I'm going to put up 2 shots that we have. You're going to see very soon here, in the lower right hand of your screen, I would imagine, some of these student demonstrators who are going to be in handcuffs, leaving Columbia University's Hamilton Hall after being arrested. I would imagine you're going to be seeing that very soon after it looks like, let's take this live and full yet again, it looks like all of the NYPD officers who have been dispatched to do the arresting of these students have gone in. And so we're waiting now for the students themselves in the zipper tie handcuffs to come out of Hamilton Hall. And so that is what we await. We have that live picture. I believe that is going to be this camera that we have there. And so we'll keep that up as well. All right, so this is what you can see right now. NYPD officials have corralled the media. That's what it appears that we are watching at the moment. They have corralled the media behind this NYPD police bus here, no doubt so they can catch a glimpse of some of the student detainees who will be ferried out of Hamilton Hall in handcuffs, presumably. We have not seen that yet. I would imagine that is going to happen. It seems like an NYPD media liaison is leading some of these press members to a better spot to catch a glimpse of some of these arrests being made here. So all the action right now that you've been watching for the last 20, 25 minutes, all the action from what we can tell is happening inside of Hamilton Hall. Okay, this is the first time we have seen some of these student demonstrators arrested. That gentleman wearing a Columbia hoodie, giving the peace sign. We do not have audio on this. We're not going to bring the audio up because viewer discretion is advised. And so you can see there NYPD officers pushing the media back. And so it seems like we now have official confirmation that arrests have been made. The media is trying to get them. These detainees will be put on these buses and they'll be taken to be processed to the nearest local NYPD precinct. This comes 24 hours, almost 24 hours after students in an unknown number, I'm not entirely sure of the total number of students, occupied Hamilton Hall. They carried out furniture, they barricaded furniture against entries, they broke windows. This was after that 2 p.m. Eastern deadline to vacate the tent encampment came and went. We also know Columbia had said that some of these students have been suspended. They threatened some of the Hamilton Hall occupiers with expulsion. That has not been confirmed just yet. Whether or not any students have been expelled due to these protests.
See this right now?
No, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want you to see on my screen the truck that has just pulled up. A truck that I have never seen in my 8 years of being a reporter in New York City, this is the emergency services unit truck here that is a very intimidating sight where you have officers with shields on the roof here. It looks like a military-grade vehicle that is coming down Amsterdam right now with protesters on each side. So we're about to see, this is all... I'm assuming this as I'm saying it out loud, if this is probably why they were moving the barricades so that this kind of truck could come through. And behind that, I don't know if you're able to see on the camera, but behind that there is a motorcade, what appears, of police vehicles. And now I'm finally seeing what appears to be the corrections department bus, which, to be frank, I was waiting to be seen because I hadn't seen the corrections department bus yet and was wondering how they were planning to make these mass arrests if they weren't going to have that bus. And now I do see it coming in with this very large police thing here that's coming through. So this is what we're seeing on site right now.
And you know, this is just many of the vehicles.
Quite a sight.
Yeah, you point out, Allie, that you've never seen a vehicle like that. I don't think I have either. I've been around a few extra years. And the departments in this country, not just in New York City, but all around the country, have purchased a lot of these vehicles for events that they are very fearful of, maybe not necessarily this type of an event. But it is interesting to see that behind that vehicle, behind that very large, almost militaristic looking vehicle.
Wow, look what they're doing here.
Go ahead.
Wow. They've just driven up to, this is how it seems they're going to be entering campus right now. Wow. They are not going through the gates, actually. They're what looks like, you know, almost like a fire truck where they have this, what do they call it, like a cherry picker type thing that's now going into what is Hamilton Hall, which is where those students are. So it seems they're not even bothering with the gates. They're just going to be coming onto campus this way.
And it looks like we're seeing it happen right now. Presumably they're going to get to a window, go through a window and get in there. Interesting that they allow our cameras to show this, because presumably anybody on the inside would be able to watch this on television. And now we sit here and wait and see how long they take to perhaps move in. Now you're saying that they have this sort of jerry-rigged ramp heading into something in Hamilton Hall. Is that correct?
Yeah, they drove up. They had the cops here on the roof of this vehicle as they drove up. They put out this, like you're saying, a ramp is essentially what it is, that they just a little ungracefully drove up towards this building. There was a bit of a crash sound out here when it drove up. And, you know,
now they're pulling away.
They're backing up a little bit, but this is, but I mean, I don't know if that's just to reposition themselves, but this seems to be their tactic. And I can't help but wonder if the police, do want to, you're saying that you're surprised that they're letting the police cameras see this, but perhaps they do want the cameras to see this because they want to perhaps be more transparent with how this is, because, since the media is not allowed onto campus, perhaps they want to be showing transparently how they will be executing these arrests.
And it could also be possible that this is a feint or a fake, and that they still would be going in, shall we say, the front door, and perhaps not going through a window, or doing both at once. And now we're seeing the vehicle pull back up to the window, and perhaps they're working on a coordinated effort here. I mean, there are all sorts of tactics that we're not privy to, but you can bet that the NYPD has scouted this out. You said the drones were up. They obviously were looking through the windows as best they could to see what they were up against. And now they have the very difficult task of executing this. Screaming to people, get back. I heard protesters yelling, shame on you. And now they're...
Yes, protesters have definitely been, yelling at them for, this whole time. I have just noticed that one of the gate entrances has just reopened. I'm trying to see if police are entering through this way here. So to your point of if, officers are going in multiple ways. So right now they're going through,
looks like they're going in.
The window here.
Yep. With guns drawn.
It's because, wow. Guns drawn, a shield up.
And what's the next move?
It's interesting that we've been talking about, and the mayor and governor and such and students have been talking about the National Guard being brought in as the last resort, but this, I don't think they were expecting this.
Well, and it almost looks as simply as this officer is trying to open the window. I mean, you would have thought that perhaps they would just smash through it, but or just looking to see who or what is on the other side of that window. But they're not immediately smashing through it, which is the move you thought they might have made.
And why they've chosen this window, I'm not sure if this is just how they're planning to, start and move to the different windows.
Yeah, Allie, you don't have any view on any lower door or anything like that to the Hamilton Hall, do you?
No, there's no street level door to that building. The entrance to Hamilton Hall where the students are is the campus side. So if you're entering from the street side, I guess the window's the way to do it. Is there something, can you see, is there something coming out of the window at this point?
No, there's nothing that I can see coming out of the window. I can't even see, your eyes play tricks on you. At one point you'd say maybe there's a shadow in that window, but I can't say that for sure either. You'd have to think that anyone on the other side of that window really has to be concerned right now what's facing them.
Yeah.
Now we're hearing
yeah, and I am now seeing the NYPD dozens going in through the gate as well. So you have police going on the ground through the gate. You have police going on in this elevated sense in the window, looking out through the window. So they're definitely making the move in. And, behind me, there are hundreds of people. This is where the media pen, so to speak, where the media has been this whole time. But there's also now all the protesters that were outside those gates now. I don't know if they're going to cut my audio because now they're cursing at the police. But, they're behind us, yelling at these officers, watching it. Everyone has their phones up recording this. So this is definitely a very...
It's also possible that this vehicle we're seeing and these guys on the window are just standing there in the event that they feel like someone's going to come try to burst out the window, escape, that kind of thing, and just sort of intimidate the people who are inside and perhaps never move at all. It's hard to tell right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
it's hard to tell, or if they're
now it appears they cut the window in half and they're going in. They were actually either moving the window up or cutting it in half. So they have breached Hamilton Hall.
They've breached Hamilton Hall officially. They are going through the window. You have officers on campus going on the ground here.
Now we've seen
they are executing.
This would be the third officer going through, another one behind him. It's hard to imagine what's on the other side. Now they've opened a second window. And this may be one of multiple entrances they're going into right now. We presume they might have been going in the front door, but this one wasn't barricaded, so perhaps this was the wise move by officers. And remember, they're ready for anything. There could be a very peaceful surrender. There could be people who get violent or not. And I think what they're hoping for is that whoever is in there will surrender peacefully. I think we're all hoping for that. Allie,
absolutely,
I was going to say, has the crowd gotten any bigger while you're out there of protesters around the building?
Yes, and it definitely has. It's grown in the past few hours just in general with protesters getting here, and now they're all on the sidewalks here behind the barricades watching the police do this. And I have noticed, so where we are, there's like an elevated walkway that goes from across Amsterdam from the campus to the other building that's on the other side of campus that's not technically on campus. So there's like an elevated walkway here essentially behind me, and that's not accessible unless you're on campus. And I see now dozens and dozens of people up there watching this as well. So whether they're people who, were on campus for other reasons, live on campus or whatnot, there's a large audience in this area.
It's a fascinating
is watching this all play out.
It's a fascinating approach or a tactic. Now, we don't know what's going on, other doors, perhaps other windows, but this certainly isn't a lightning strike into Hamilton Hall. This is a slow, laborious process. So you have to figure perhaps there are two or maybe two more points of entry that they're going into right now. But right now, I think we're up to about 9 or 10 officers that have made their way in there.
And there's a line behind of, I don't even know, at least a dozen officers that are on the ladder behind them waiting to, seemingly go in. They're lined up behind the cops that are going through the window now. And they have a line that were all in that truck that pulled up a few minutes ago, seemingly going in.
And they all are armed, and they all have riot gear on, and they don't know what they're going to encounter because police had been told that professional agitators were in Hamilton Hall. They didn't know how many, and they couldn't say where they were from necessarily, but they did say, quote, "We have seen them elsewhere," which is sort of a warning to officers that they're professionals, they know what they're doing, and perhaps they want to make sure that they're not setting any traps or they're not waiting for them. But now it appears there's a much more energetic, shall we say, approach into the building. And now, assuming once they get in there, they have to detain the people who are in there, they have to put them in the zip ties, and then they have to get them out of there, and then also say to themselves, okay, we're going to be coming down to some protesters who are not going to be happy to see these arrests. And that could make things very difficult for the NYPD.
Definitely, and that's why you have these barricades here, and that's why I think before this truck came in, they made a point to move the protesters to the opposite side of the street behind the barricades. But I do want to, remind our audience that when the police arrested the students, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago or so, the first go around, and they brought them down to police headquarters downtown for processing and such. There was a large group of protesters that actually tried to block that bus that was carrying the arrested students as it got down. Clearly, they were not fully successful. Police were able to carry out what they needed to do with the people that they had in custody there. But, you know, that is the
So as of always, folks, make of this what you will, but the images that we are seeing on the screen of those police entering that Hamilton Hall Library on Columbia campus, I'm sure will be replayed and etched in our memories until the next psychological operation comes our way to erase any memory of it. That is, of course, unless this is a developing event, and it will be ongoing, and we will see maybe not just in New York, but around the nation of the United States, where some of these other protests are taking places at other college campuses. That will remain to see if we see the police going in there with riot shields and heavy-handed tactics, as well as, you know, the sort of military-grade vehicles and technology that they bring to the game when they are brought into action to use FEMA field force operations tactics when dealing with civil unrest, domestic disturbance, riot, protest situations, and dare I say it, martial law, should that ever be implemented. And are they going to use all of these college protests as a way to implement martial law? We've already heard in this stream that a shelter in place was issued, and we have seen a video removed from the internet within minutes of it being released. But that is it, guys. I am going to wrap things up for now. As I said, it was hoping that I could have done this live, but the next best thing was to bring you a video, and hopefully you who watched this as a live premiere will have contributed greatly to the chat through the duration of this. But all that remains to be said from me is, until next time, folks, take care. May the force be with us all, and always, and most importantly, let's just be excellent to each other. So as I said, this is RD signing out. Till next time, we'll see you then.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
Hey, Luke. May the force be with you.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.